Shalom and welcome to another edition here at the Genesis 49ers page. Today's topic is going to be Esau. We're not going to give you a vague description of Esau. We're going to give you a thorough breakdown throughout the annals of history and other records relating to Esau, and that we can clearly see the correlation with him and the people of Esau with the modern day, what we know as the Caucasian. So Esau is the Caucasian. There's a lot of confusion out there. A lot of people say, no, they're the Arabs. No, they're this, they're that. We're going to show without no shadow of doubt that they come from, the Caucasians come from Esau. There's no other variation. And also, I seen a post on Facebook about who's the real Greeks, Japhet or Esau. The original Greeks were Japhet, but they were intermixed with Esau, which we're going to bring out the information on how Esau went to the Indo-European countries, okay, and provinces throughout the early times, okay. We're going to go into that. So this video is going to be very informative. So without no further ado, let's commence. First slide. Topics, the sources going to be Assyrians, the origins of the Greco-Romans, the Chronicles of Jeremiah, to name a few. Who is Esau? That is the question. Timon, the posterity of Esau. If you read Genesis, the 36th chapter, you'll see that Timon is one of the sons of Esau. Points of interest is what we're going to be reading on the right. That's from the Dictionary of Greek and Roman Biography and Mythology by Smith, 1800s. It says the expansion of the Macedons was associated by Herodotus and Thucydides with a royal house, the Timidai of Argos and the Peloponnese. Thus, the Timidai of Macedon, as in the oracle we have just cited. Now, remember that the Timidai. That's one of our points of interest. Timid. Okay, Macedon, because we're going to be bringing scriptures out about Macedon and how they are related to the Edomites. The Macedonians are related to the Edomites. And we can see that the Timidai, or the people of Timon, because Adai means people of Timon. Timon is who? Of the lineage of Esau. Okay? So it says, thus the Timidai of Macedon, as an oracle we have just cited, were a branch of the Timidai, the royal house of Argos. Both historians were in agreement also on the number of generations which divide the first king, Perdiccas, from reigning king. Since Thucydides numbered Archelaus, the ninth of the line, we may date the florid of the first king, around 650 BC, on the basis of 30 years to a generation. Such a date for arrival of the Perdiccas, one incidentally, which occurred in the king's list of the Macedonians, is acceptable on the grounds, for it was then the Timid leader Phaedon of Argos fell from power, and the Arian rule at Virginia came to an end. At the turn of the 6th century, the descent of the Macedonian royal house from the Timidai of Argos was upheld by the judges at Olympia when Alexander was admitted as a competitor. Interesting links between Argos and Macedon have been discovered recently. Bronze Age tumuli at Argos, it is now known, were reused for burial during the geometric period, and the users were most probably the then rulers of Argos, the Timidai, meaning the children of Timon. Who are the Timonites? They are from Edomite. They are from Edomite lineage. They are of Esau. Okay, from his grandson Timon. Equally at the Macedonian capital, Agai. Remember that. That's one of my points of interest I have listed, because Agai comes from Agag. Like you got the Aegean Sea, the Aegean Sea. That comes from the word Agag, which was an Amalek king title, right? It says royal burials were under tumuli, and tumuli crowned the built tombs at Virginia, of which one found Romaios contained a marble stone and another excavated by Andronikos. Okay, you can read this on your own. The rest of it is just a little bit left, but I got my points that I want to make. The points of interest: Macedon, Timon, Alexander, Agag. Okay, these are all related to Esau. Keep that in mind, right? And Macedon is above Greece and in between Thrace. Okay, so it's in what we know as is Europe today. Now let's check the biblical record about Macedon, right? This is additions to Esther 16:10. It's in the Apocrypha. It says, for Ammon, a Macedonian, the son of Amminadab, being indeed a stranger from Persian blood. So Ammon was a Macedonian. Remember that. Esther 3 verse 1. After these things did King Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of Amminadab, the Agagite. Who are the Agagites? 1 Samuel 15:8. And he took Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive. The Agagites are of the Edomite stock, because the Amalekites come from Esau. Okay? And they would call, Agag means a high one. They would call their kings Agag, or a high one. So the Agagites, or the high ones, are the people that come from Esau. Okay? That's why you have the Aegean Sea, the capital of Macedon is Agag, Agag, or however you say it in their respected tongue. It goes back to that word Agag, which is used by Esau. So Haman, the Edomite, was called a Macedonian. Why? Because Edomites ruled Macedon. Simple. From the lineage of Timon, which comes from the posterity of Esau. This is not hard. We see exactly where that lineage goes back to. And why is this important? Because Philip II, the king of Macedon, came, and through him, his son Alexander the Great, we know him, went and ruled Greece, became the first Edomite ruler over Greece. And we know that they are of the Caucasian stock. Next slide. Europe, or Euro, right? You see Macedonia, Thrace, Greece, and you can actually see, Agai. That comes from the word Agag. The Aegean Sea. This all is related to Esau. Not related to anybody else but Esau. Esau is the Caucasian. Okay? And we're going to bring more and more proof throughout this presentation. Okay? Look at Thebes, because we're going to talk about Thebes a little later in this presentation. Next slide. History, Thucydides, the country by the sea which is now called Macedonia. Alexander, the father of Perdiccas, and his forefathers were originally Timadi from Argos. You can clearly see who are the Timadi. We already brought it out. Timadi, Timon, Adai, meaning people of Timon, or Adai, meaning people of Timon. Who is Timon? He's of the Edomite line. So there's no confusion on who the Edomites are. The Greeks and the Romans fused the empire. We know who the Romans were. We know exactly who they are. They were Caucasians. They will be called Caucasian in today's standards, with today's standards. So we know who Esau is. Alexander descended from Philip II, the Macedonian. The Macedonians come from the Timonites. So the new Greeks are of the Edomite race, the Edomite nationality. Simple. Both Greeks and Romans, and we're going to get into the Roman history in a minute. But first, let's touch on how the Edomites went from a Middle Eastern people to what we know as a European people. And it started in the early days. We read earlier about the Bronze Age. Hittite. You got to understand this. Esau had a relationship with Hittite women, okay, which gives them ties to the Hittite land, right? Just like when you read about people having, that's how Abraham went to the Canaanite land, different Syria, they had different relationships with those people. So that's going to Esau. It says the Timenu of Edom and Gozed in northern Syria were the same entity as the neighboring Tumani in northern Turkey. Where's Turkey? Turkey is Eurasia. It almost touches what we know as Europe, Thrace, Macedon, and Greece. Assyrian records from the 1000 BCE mention Timene, Timana, Timani, Tamnuna, Timen. These are all different forms of the same people as in common with the Assyrian inscriptions. Later in 800 BC, they were also found in the region of Assyria between Nineveh and Calah. Another group of this people was to occupy a suburb of Babylonia. And that's from the book Germany and Edom, 2nd edition by Yair and David. So you had these Timonite people living in Turkey, Eurasia, Babylonia. Okay, these were Edomites. And you can see right here a prisoner of Saqqara in Egypt, how one of these Hittites look. That looks like a Caucasian. Why? Because Esau intermarried and intermixed and intermingled with these Hittite people of Turkey. Next slide. I'm going to show you. And this is how they eventually bridged over into Europe. Genesis 26:34. And Esau was 40 years old, and he took to wife Judith, the daughter of Beri the Hittite, and Bashemoth, the daughter of Elon the Hittite. So he married Hittite people, which would give him ties to the Hittite land. His posterity would have a relationship with different Hittite lands. So that explains why you have the Tamanu or the Timani in Turkey, what we call modern day Turkey, because those were Hittite lands. We're going to show you the map of Hittite, the Hittite kingdom. This is Turkey, Syria, Eurasia. You can see it touch where modern day Europe is, up top, left corner. So they had a relationship with these people. So it makes sense for them to come up here and then bridge over through the Aegean Sea to Thrace, Macedon, and Greece, so on and so forth, right? Let me state this real quick. Esau is not originally a European people. They don't come from that area. They come from the Middle East, but through migration, wars, and so on and so forth, and different elements throughout the history, they went into those lands. The people that belong to these European plains and lands are the Japhetic people. Let's set that straight, okay? It's the Japhetic people. And I will be doing a video on that in the near future. All right, so Genesis 27:39. Isaac, his father, answered, said unto him, Behold, thy dweller shall be the fatness of the earth and the dew of heaven from above. So Esau would be nomadic people as well. They wouldn't just stay within the Middle East. You read in 1 Chronicles 4, I believe, that the tribe of Simeon ran them out of Mount Seir. He destroyed the rest of the Amalekites out of Mount Seir, and they moved and lived in Mount Seir during the time of Hezekiah. So Esau didn't just stay in the Middle East. They migrated. And a lot of their posterity went into the European plains with Japhet and different Hamitic tribes. That's another thing. Hamites are not predicated or only restricted to the continent as we know today as Africa. That is a lie. We just showed you Hittites come from Ham. They were in Turkey. They were in Eurasia. So that's a complete farce. Next slide. Edomeus, on finding that his life was in danger, sailed for Italy, where he built soon after his arrival the city of Petilia near Saletum, or according to some, Saletum itself. Edomeus, however, afterwards returned, and as well as Marion died in his own country, where a magnificent tomb was erected of them, at which they received divine honors. The Cretans sacrificed to them as heroes, and in their wars invoking them as their protectors. This tomb was still visible in the time of Diodorus at Knossos, with the inscription, Here lies Marion by the side of Edomeus. Okay, that's from the Bell's New Pantheon, Volume 2, page 5. So they have a legend of Edomeus. And who is that? Esau, going to where? Italy. So that shows you the relationship of when Esau, or Edom, went into Italy and went to Rome. Okay? And started intermingling with the Roman, the original, they weren't called Romans, the Etruscans, okay? Which were a Japhetic seed. They were black people. Esau came, a pale, reddish people came and mixed with a dark-skinned people. And this is not from no Bible or biblical record or no interpretation. This is what it says in the annals of history. Diodorus took note of this. A well-known historian, Diodorus Siculus. Okay? And again, the book I got there from is Bell's New Pantheon, Volume 2, page 5. So we don't have to guess who Esau is. Show me sources proving that the Arabs are Esau. Show me. Can you do the same thing I'm doing for the Arabs? The answer is no. Okay, so right here, Europe, it says, from that day henceforth, Gondalis and the armies of kings of Africa ravished the land of Kittim for spoil and plunder. Sepho always accompanied them. When this Sepho, the son of Eliphaz, traveled from Africa to Kittim, the inhabitants received him with great honor and presented him with many gifts. that he became very rich. Sepho comes from Esau's lineage. Read Genesis 36 to get the posterity of Esau, his children, the people that descend from him. According to the Chronicles of Jeremiah, he went to Captor or Rome, because that's a big debate what Kittim is. Either way, we just read a source that can be backed up by Diodorus. Diodorus, that something similar with Edomeus, he went to Italy, and he went back to the island of Crete or Captor. Okay. Chronicles of Jeremiah saying the same thing, man. This case, like, this is about to be case closed. You can see Esau going into these different European locales and islands throughout the annals of history. Chronicles of Jeremiah, where you can find that information. It says, and the troops of Africa spread themselves all over the land of Kittim, and having assembled, ascended the mountain of Caporicio. Okay, next slide. So you see Esau's early influence over the European isles and different lands and plains. Okay, Esau, we're going to move from the BC era to the AD era on this slide. Okay, the Isaurian kings. You could the Isaurian people are Edomites, man. And they became Byzantine kings. Some became, like we're going to read about Emperor Zeno, he became a Byzantine king illegitimately by marrying into the stock, marrying into the line. And the king didn't have any successor, so his daughter's husband became a king, which was Isaurian. And it started a 7-year war because the people said he was not of the bloodline. He could not rule the Byzantine line. He could not rule the Byzantine kingdom because he wasn't of the bloodline. He was an Edomite. We're going to get into that, okay? I can do a whole video on these Isaurian kings. But before I read this quote, you got a few Isaurian kings. You had Leo III, Constantine, Leo IV, Constantine VI, Irene of Athens, 700 to 800 AD. That's around the time they ruled. Now, some people will tell you that, oh, the Byzantine Empire was all Negroes. No, it wasn't. Constantine, he was, okay, and a lot of his kindred was and were, in fact, what you would call Negroid. But you get to a point of period when Zeno becomes emperor, he becomes the Edomite king. The Edomites start influencing the Byzantine Empire, right? And that's where you get the iconoclasm and stuff like that come around when they start changing the images of Christ. This is when it really started happening, when they start destroying and whitewashing a lot of things. This topic hasn't been touched on, but you can clearly see that these are Edomites. This is why I brought it out. What I said earlier is for another video, so let's get into it. Emperor Zeno visits Sikkim. Okay, this is the great conflict that was brewing between the Samaritans and the Byzantine Empire first came to head during the reign of Zeno, 474-471 AD. According to the Samaritan Chronicles 43, in the 12th year of the pontificate of the high priest Nathaniel, Zayat the king of Edom, this is what they called him, Zayat the king of Edom. They understood the Isaurians were Edomites. They understood that. They weren't saying this because it was the cool thing to say or it was a deep analogy. No, they understood Isaurian meant Edomite or of Esau's lineage. They called Zayat the king of Edom. Or Zeno, i.e. Zeno, emperor of Rome, came to Sikkim and greatly oppressed the Samaritans. Zeno summoned the elders, the scholars, and the priests and told them, if you do not convert, I shall put you to death. They answered, we are resigned to death by the will of God. We shall prostrate ourselves in front of none but him. The emperor ordered the death of a great many Samaritans. 123 years after the erection of the synagogue by high priest Ashkan, the emperor Zeno took it from the Samaritans and established it as a monastery for his saints. So you see what they put in the Chronicles. This is written history that he was Zayat, the king of Edom. So the Isaurians are Edomites. Okay? And you can clearly see Leo III don't look like no Arab. He looks like a Caucasian. Constantine, Leo IV. That Constantine is not the original Constantine. Leo IV, Constantine VI. They just took our names. Irene of Athens, which is a woman. These are all what you would call Caucasians, because they would take the images of Negroes and make them look white. They started that iconoclasm. They started the image breakers, the whitewashing. when you do the history, which I will be doing a video in the near future. Next slide. Euro again, right? Europe. It says, if Cadmus was once known as a descriptive... Oh, you know what? Let me read what book I got that from. History of Byzantine Jews by ESAU Cohen, page 25. Next slide. If Cadmus was once known as a descriptive, adjective, Easterner, or ancient one, are both the true name of the founder of Thebes. Remember I told you. Remember Thebes. We're going to touch on that later. Now we're touching on it. Might have been Ogios, and Agag might carry the same name with its initial vowels reduced as in Phoenician. Ogios, Agag, they're comparing the same, just like we was comparing the Aegean Sea and the capital of Macedon being named after Agag, or after that title. And that's from the Legacy of Iranian Imperialism by John P. Brown, page 49. And you see Thebes right here. You can clearly see Esau's influence on the early European plains and lands. Right? They came after Japhet, and they intermingled within the Japhet and different Hamitic populations in those lands. Because the Sea peoples were all over the Aegean Sea as well. And the Sea people we know are Philistine or Phoenician people. Okay? They are Hamitic. Get out of your mind what you've been taught that Ham represents Africa. That's not true. They were in different lands. I see now I'm going to have to do a video, you know, just focusing on that topic as well. Next slide. Middle, meaning the Middle Ages. This is from the Classical Oratory in Sephardim by Esberger, page 87. It says, for demonstrating a particular proposition, furthermore, Aguilar continues by claiming that it does no harm to spend time studying other sciences, especially logic, since these may enhance the student's understanding of the sophist argument of the Edomians, i.e. the Gentiles or Christians. The Christians were called Edomians because during this time in the Middle Age, majority of Esau, thanks to the Isaurians, were Christian because they came into the Byzantine kingdom and infiltrated. And we knew that. We understood their race were Edomian, who through error reject the laws and judgment which our Lord commanded us through our master Moses. This methodology was apparently not given to the Jews alone. Okay? And that's from the Classical Oratory in Sephardim by S. Berger, page 87. The foe inimico proclaimed in hearing of the community that the enemy be driven from the city and be put to flight. Panic was great in the town. Each Jew in the inner court of bishop girded on his weapons and all moved towards the palace gate to fight the Crusaders and burghers. Who are the Crusaders? The so-called Christians. These were the Edomians, the Edomites at this time. That's why if you look at the image of the Saracens battling the French or whatever, the French is always white and the Saracens are always black. A dark-skinned depicted Negroid people. And those Saracens were Muslim and Jews going against Edomites. Simple. It says, they fought each other up to very gate, but the sins of the Jews brought about that the enemy overcame them and took the gate. And this is in France, by the way. I think it's Mainz. This happened in Mainz, France. The hand of the Lord was heavy against his people. All the Gentiles were gathered together against the Jews in the courtyard to blot out the name. And the strength of our people weakened when they saw the wicked Edomites overpowering them. So, we know who these Christians were during this time period. Edomites. Caucasians. Our people wasn't stupid and dumb. They called them this for a reason because they knew their lineage goes back to Rome, the Grecians, the Macedonians, and ultimately Esau. Next slide. Of Jacob and Esau, the alleged ancestor of the Romans, who typify, as we have seen, the nations, where in the Bible, Esau is no more than the ancestor and founder of a small kingdom of Edom. And that's what people say. Oh, they're just a small kingdom of Edom. That doesn't exist. Yes, they still exist. They migrated and they moved easy. They became bigger than that. Like we read earlier, Idomeneus, he went to Italy. We read about Zepho going to Kittim. Okay? We read about the Timonites going into Turkey. The Timoni ruling Macedon, being the ruling class of Macedon. So no, he just didn't stay in the Middle East. By the rabbinic period, he is identified as the ancestor of the Romans, or as the founder of their city. Romans thus refer to the kingdom of Esau, son of Esau, Esau, kingdom of Edom, and Edom, top court. The Romans themselves are said to identify with Esau. Let me read that again. The Romans themselves, meaning they record themselves, are said to identify with Esau. They identify with Edomites as being what? Their relatives, their lineage goes back to them. Consequently, the rabbinic exegesis of the biblical account of Esau and Jacob constitutes a web of veiled references to Roman Israel. The contrast between Jacob and Esau, the latter relying on the physical strength, the former on prayer as implied on the verse, the voice of Jacob's voice in the hands of Esau's hands. And that comes from Jewish Identity and Early Rabbinic Writings by Sash Stem, page 19. So the Greeks, Romans, Macedonians, all Edomites. Their lineage goes to the Isaurians, those Byzantine rulers, those middle-aged Christians, they called themselves Christians. Okay, around 911 to like 11, 1200, 13, 1400, where you get Columbus and all of them from. Queen Elizabeth, they were Christians. Those are Edomites. These are the records that prove it. Next slide. Here it is, the Tomb of Leopards, Necropolis of Monterosi at Lazio, Italy. The Etruscans, the original people of Italy. They were black. And you can see them intermingling with what you know as Caucasians. What they call, quote unquote, fair skin, pale skin, with yellow hair, with dark skinned people. These are the original people of the land. You can distort whatever you want to distort, but you can't distort this original image in the Tomb of Leopards. And you can see them intermingling with these, quote unquote, what you would call white people or Caucasians. This shows the history that we've been reading this whole presentation, that Edomites infiltrated and intermingled with the different European, dark-skinned European people. That's how they got to Europe. Their homeland is not Europe, it's the Middle East, but they migrated. Understand that. This is the Tomb of Leopards at Necropolis Monterosi at Lazio, Italy, depicting the Etruscans, which will be Japhetic people. You can't dispute this art. Last and final slide. Right? Edom. We're going to put this subject in the bag. This is going to be a body bag. And I hope I drive this home. I hope all of my listeners and viewers and the people that watch this video from the beginning to the end can clearly see that Esau is the Caucasian. But we're going to tie it all together with this. Remember what I said about these people that go around calling themselves Christians during the Middle Ages. Okay? Edom. The polemic writings repeat the same argument since the authors copy from one another. Sefer Yosef HaMakanah, Joseph the Zealous, written by Joseph Bar Nathan of Isil in northern France in the middle of the 13th century, contains the following dispute between the apostate Jew and the author's father, Rabbi Nathan. I made you contemptible and base before all people, Malachi 2:9, said a certain apostate of Rabbi Nathan. You are uglier than any people on earth, and our people are very handsome. He replied, those big plums that grow along the scene, what blossom do they have? He said to him, white. And what color is the apple blossom? He said to him, red. He answered, that is what we are, from a pure white seed, which is the sperm. And our faces are dark, black. So, the Jew is black, Sheharim, right? While you are Edomites, a red race. He's comparing their race to the apple that blooms and turns red. That's when you look at these Caucasians, they're pink, they're red. A lot of them look very red. I'm going to keep it frank with you. And we always knew this. This is from the 13th century. Okay? We understood the Edomites were a red race, conceived from a menstruating woman, so that you are yellow and red. What are you talking about yellow? Their hair. Because a lot of Edom, well, I ain't going to say a lot, but a considerable amount, let me put it like that, since we want to be PC a lot. A considerable amount of Caucasians have yellow hair. Blonde hair. I know some dark nations have it, but we're talking about people that are yellow and red. Who are that? Caucasians. Why so? Because we are in exile, and it said in Song of Songs 1:6, look not upon me because I am black. He's talking about the Jews. They are black. He's saying the Jews are black, but you people call yourself Christians. You guys are a red race. A yellow and red race. Who is this? Who is this talk? Who could this be talking about? Ding, ding, ding. Caucasians. Let me read on. Look not upon me because I am black, because the sun have looked upon me. My mother's children were angry with me. They had me the keeper of the vineyards. But my own vineyard I have not kept. But when I kept my own vineyard, I was most beautiful, as it is written. And thy renown went forth among the heathen for thy beauty. Ezekiel 16:14. So basically saying he's black and he's proud. He's black and he's beautiful. A lot of the things we say today. But the point I want to bring out here, he understood that the Christian was red and yellow. They were Edomites. They were Caucasians. To sum it all up, we understood this in the 13th century, people. The image of the black in Jewish culture, a history of the other, by Abraham Melamed, page 34. So with that, I'm going to conclude the lesson, and I pray that this was very informative and that I got to all my points across to the laity and the people that are watching, that you're able to take notes, learn, and actually see the validity of the claims we've been claiming for a long time, that Esau is the so-called white man. We can actually show and prove it. Write these sources down. Keep these sources. Keep this information. Write it down. The best way to retain knowledge is to write it down and record it. That's what we've been reading. Records. Okay? Again, man. Thanks for watching Genesis 49ers. Well, we don't do vague descriptions. Let's get away from this vague description era. Let's start digging into these titles. If we want to talk about Esau, we need to dig into these themes, these topics, and thoroughly explain it to the people so we can stop this confusion that's going around. Right? So as you can clearly see, Esau is the Caucasian with proof, with facts. With that, I say shalom. Shout out to the family, the Hebrews, the brothers that want to learn. Shout out to y'all. Genesis 49ers signing out.